is that story about the prince, Emir, Sheikh, Bedouin, nomad, and he was known as Sheikh Hamid. Sheikh Hamid was rich. He had a herd of sheep, a herd of camels, but he was also known and renowned for his generosity and his hospitality. So it was not long before all his possessions were gone. The only thing left to Sheikh Hamid was a she-camel that carried his tent from place to place. Now it so happened that the Sultan of that domain would often go abroad in the company with his Grand Vizier, disguised as dervishes, to check on how the people were faring. And the Sultan found himself at the tent of Sheikh Hamid. Sheikh Hamid invited the Sultan and the Vizier in their disguise in and laid down mats on the floor for them, and then silently indicating to the screen behind which his wife and family, female members, were, that they should serve food for their guests. But verbally, the wife replied, "There is nothing that in this tent that can be offered to a guest." So Sheikh Hamid also verbally requested his wife to go to their neighbors and ask for some flour with which to bake something for them. And this she did, but when she came back, she told all who were present that the neighbor had said, "Let he who has a she-camel give hospitality, because we are poor people, we have nothing to give." So with that, Sheikh Hamid took his sword and severed the throat of his she-camel and sliced its flesh into the pot, and this was served to their guests. Now the Sultan, seeing this, said, "How can you give us this when this is the means of taking your tent from place to place?" And Sheikh Hamid replied, "The call to give is greater than the call to possess." Now the Sultan, recognizing this after his hospitality, said to him, "Come to the mosque on Saturday, and you will have returned to you your she-camel." So that next Saturday, the Sheikh went to the mosque and he asked, "Where is the Sultan?" And the Sultan was pointed out to him, kneeling on his prayer rug, praying. And Sheikh Hamid thought to himself, "Our Sultan is asking for a replacement for my she-camel, but I am able to ask for myself." So gathering himself up, he left the mosque and went to a small hill, where he took off his cloak and laid it down as a prayer mat and knelt down. And his prayer was, "Please give me that for which the Sultan is praying." But as Sheikh Hamid rose up from his knees, leaning on his staff entered the sand and slid apart to reveal 7 chests filled with gold. Sheikh Hamid was now a rich man once again. His herds were replenished. He had herd of sheep and camels, rich tents adorned with Persian rugs and the like. But then one day the Sultan said to his Grand Vizier, "I wonder how that prince who gave us the hospitality is faring. Let's go and see." So in their disguise again they went, but soon they came to a place where the camels and the sheep were evident, and they asked people, "Who do these herds belong to?" And the reply, of course, was that they belonged to Sheikh Hamid. So they went to Sheikh Hamid's now resplendent tent and were given wonderful hospitality. But when the Sultan asked how this came about, the Sheikh Hamid told them the complete story. But then the Grand Vizier leant over to the Sultan and said, "Even you do not possess 7 barrels of gold. Pretty soon this sheikh will be grander than you, and he will no doubt want to usurp your kingdom. You should lop his head." The Sultan replied in a whisper, "But this man has given us hospitality. How could we do this to him?" And the Grand Vizier replied, "Well, why don't you tell him that you had a dream, and in the dream you said, 'Ow, ow, ow,' and he will have to reply that this is the sound of a dog. Enough insult for you to have justification to lop his head." So the very next morning, sitting around their spiced tea, the Sultan said to Sheikh Hamid, "I had a dream last night that I said, 'Ow, ow, ow.' What would you interpret this dream as meaning? May it be a good omen?" And Sheikh Hamid said, "Why, even in our dreams, we acknowledge the power of God. The first ow is the ow in Tao, which acknowledges the power of light over darkness. The second ow is the ow in Jiao, which acknowledges the power that lifts the birds on its wings and lifts the minds of man. And the third ow is the ow in Sao, which gives the power of man to know the difference between good and evil." And just then a thunderous scowl came onto the face of the Sultan, and in that instant he took out his sword and lopped the head of his Grand Vizier from its shoulders. From that moment on, the Sultan desired, and indeed was obeyed, that Sheikh Hamid was always at his side. What is the deep meaning of this story for us? What does Sheikh Hamid represent to us, in us?
The power of our own connection to the source of being.
Absolutely so.
Mm.